episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today, obviously, no exception. One of the reasons I love doing these early shows is Lily Pauly, hi from England, the UK, and we've got people from all around the world who join us during these earlier shows. So welcome to all. We're going to get right into it. First of all, a very special shout out to Evan D. Madam. Evan is a woman, Evan D., who's on the mend after a little health scare. So wishing Evan D. a quick recovery, and hope she is listening today. A little background on what we're going to discuss today. August 10th, 2022, OnlyFans and Instagram model Courtney Clenney, who had about 2 million Instagram followers, was arrested for second-degree murder in connection with the death of her 27-year-old boyfriend, Christian Toby Obumseli. He was stabbed to death on April 3rd, 2022 at the apartment the couple shared in the Edgewater neighborhood of Florida. I just found out the COE and I had a very close couple friend of ours that were living there while they were having their house built. So got a little scoop on that. On the day of Christian's murder, Clenney, who goes by Courtney Tailor on Instagram and OnlyFans, called 911 to report that her boyfriend had been stabbed during an altercation between the two of them. Clenney is actually due back in a Miami courtroom on Friday, and I'm hoping the man you're looking at on the bottom right-hand corner, Tim Jansen, will give us some live coverage and analysis as that comes to you from Miami, Florida. Without further ado, our best guest today, Kimberly Ward, is Christian Obumseli's civil attorney. She's a trial attorney at the Haggard Law Firm in Fort Lauderdale with a focus on sexual assault, catastrophic personal injury, wrongful death, products liability, drowning, and boating injuries. She's obtained over $160 million in jury verdicts and $67 million in settlements. Not a shabby number. Man, rivaling that for sure, famed Tallahassee defense attorney R. Timothy Jansen, a partner in the firm that bears his name, Jansen and Davis. He has done it all, including 5 years as a federal prosecutor. No one knows Tallahassee like Tim Jansen. That's why we've had him on with the Dan Markel Adelson story. And last but not least, sound the Carm alarm. She is here. Carm, I don't want to get into a familial battle, especially in light of this story, which is about DV. I don't want to say the words because YouTube doesn't like the words, but I had your word that you were going to be at my home 30 minutes ahead of time, and you got there at 3:46, which is 14 minutes ahead of time. Any response? Oh, you're muted. She just cursed and you didn't even hear it. You're going to have to ask the COE. You're going to have to ask the COE to unmute you.
You are very annoying today. I have to say that. I did it.
Okay.
Kim, do me a favor, Kim. Tell me, how did you become Christian Obumseli's lawyer? And you're on the civil side, is that correct? So just tell us, what you're handling, how you became engaged, and so forth.
So, for better or worse, I always say, unfortunately, our firm does have a reputation for handling these sexual assault, these DV cases. And I say unfortunately because truthfully, in my business, I hope that we are so successful in cases like this that they don't exist anymore and that we get ourselves out of business. I would love that the phone doesn't ring and I don't have to handle one of these cases again. But unfortunately it does. And because of that, what my firm has had a history of is holding entities like this responsible. Whenever you have a tragedy like this, there are always two different avenues of recovery. The criminal justice system that is extremely important. You also have the civil justice system. And I think this case is a really good example of that because there are injustices. There are people who need to be held accountable in both of these systems. And when you get through the facts and everything, specifically in the civil case, it's just so much more complicated. And it's, when everything comes out, there were so many failures, so many notices, that so many opportunities to shut this down, that a murder never should have actually occurred.
Tim Jansen, that is all very interesting. I'm going to circle back, Kim, and we'll dissect it a little more. And I can already tell you're a competent attorney by the way you laid all of that out. Carm, you can let the COE know she's also cutting off the title of our show, but I'll have a word. There's tension in the air today.
No, you are feeling tension. I'm absolutely mellow.
By the way, our babysitter, 5 minutes before Carm was 5 minutes late, got in a fender bender at school pickup. So I like to be transparent on STS, let you know all the family drama. Carm said to me, in my 63 years, I never had this kind of drama. She's alluding to the fact that 63 years. Just Kim Wald's
like, what it's like when you misplace and you misplace your emotions on your poor little mother.
By the way, Kim Wald's like, what did I get myself into? This is what happens when Carm is on the show. Just don't worry, Kim, it will be fine. Tim
Sounds like me and my dad. It's great.
There you go. Sweden is in the house here. They could broker a peace deal, but yeah. So my nanny gets into a fender bender at the school pickup line today, and my 4.5. I knew the news because my wife was already calling for the insurance card. My 4.5-year-old son comes running in. Victoria got in a car accident, and she hit my best friend's mother. I was like, wow, well, that's great. So that's my day today. Tim, you've had time to digest all this since the last time we've discussed it. From a criminal standpoint, how strong do you think the case is against Courtney Clenney here, criminally speaking?
Well, I think her own words have really strengthened the state's case, given that interview with the police and describing what allegedly happened and how she threw this knife 10 feet away when she was holding it in a position like the old movie Psycho in the bathroom. You can't throw a knife that way. The autopsy report is clear. It was a downward thrust with great force to go 8 centimeters. So there's no way it was thrown from 10 feet away. And then her regular statements just don't fit the crime scene at all.
Carm has her hand raised. Go ahead, Carm.
She does.
Regarding the knife and the knife throwing, unfortunately, I don't remember what is the name of Courtney's, I think her first name is Sabrina, Courtney's attorney. And she said that she tried to throw the knife the same way, and it's possible.
That is that's a defense attorney speaking. Tim Jansen.
It's her defense attorney.
Her Sabrina, I forget her last name, and Frank Pietro, and Kim can help us with that. But Tim, you want to respond to my mom's claim that the defense attorney claims it is possible?
Sure.
She tried it.
Well, first of all, the judge is going to tell the jury an opening statement. What the lawyers say is not evidence. The lawyers are not allowed to testify. I doubt that this lawyer is a knife throwing expert. I doubt that this lawyer is able to recreate the exact scenario, the exact knife, the exact locations, and the exact body composition of the victim. So, but that's one thing. And they can hire, and they'll probably find an expert, and they'll pay him probably $25,000 to come in and say, I was able to, it's possible. The question is it probable? And do the facts fit this case? And the state will have an expert. I'm sure that the civil lawyers have an expert, and the autopsy is going to, common sense, Carm, you know that. Common sense is that enemy of fabricated evidence.
Yeah,
very
common sense.
Long live common sense. Look at this comment, Carm, from Nikki Coods. Ordered the book. Thank you, Nikki. On that note, I can't resist. I can't help myself.
Just resist, handsome.
I'm going to put that up there. And Carm, let me just ask you, and then we're going to dig into this real deep. Aunt Clara says Carm has become, By the way, that's the QR code. If you hold your phone up, you can pre-order the book. You will hear the real Carm, not the muted version that you heard earlier with her cursing at me, not realizing she
I
was
did
muted.
not curse. I have witnesses.
Carm, scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you about these curse words coming out in this book?
To get this off the thing, because you
I
kept
told
it
you she
there.
doesn't. But Carm, here's the comment. Carm has become everyone's here's mother. Do you feel added pressure? Do you feel a burden on your shoulders?
I hope my other children are more patient with me than my son sitting here.
So, Kim, you're the star of this show, obviously, Christian's attorney. Do me a favor. You obviously didn't get to meet him because it was after the fact, after he was already killed, from what I understand. But I'm sure you've spoken with the family. Tell us a little bit about him, the kind of person he was, the ambition he had. I understand he was quite successful.
Yeah, so Christian, obviously lost his life at 27 years old. He was survived by his two parents and his brother Jeffrey. And they just had a really close family. All of his cousins, they all really grew up together in Dallas, Texas. And, some of the family was in Houston, and they would get together for family gatherings. That's just who they were. Every Christmas, every birthday, all of those things, they were a really, really close-knit family. He went to high school locally in Texas, Palo East Senior High, and then he went to he had college. He went to Texas Tech. He played some rugby in college, and then he fell in with Courtney. And when he fell in with Courtney, he was kind of a little bit isolated from his family. And we see that trend in a lot of DV cases that when there is this situation going on, that you have a powerful person in a relationship, that they're sucking another one in, that there is this dynamic of isolation. And the family was noticing a little bit of what was going on here. He wasn't around as much. And unfortunately now, with all of the criminal case, with the videos coming out and all the subpoena and all the evidence, we're seeing what happened. And we're really seeing the dynamic and the things that were occurring behind closed doors that, before the trial was just privy to the two of them, of course.
Tim Jansen, Steve Cohen, I'd like him to weigh back in on this, and then I'm going to get Carm involved from a therapist standpoint about the DV. Tim, to you, there was just an article that Steve Cohen, our good friend, sent me in the New York Post, basically talking about how the Miami PD, the Miami Police Department, who I used to deal with quite a lot as a reporter in the city of Miami, and they're an excellent police department, but at times definitely can be a little sloppy. And they really just considered this self-defense without much of an investigation. How cynical do you have to be as a criminal defense attorney? And how do you do your due diligence in terms of your own investigation? Because it appears this wasn't self-defense after all.
Well, it all depends. Are you talking about the police officers who are on patrol that showed up and made that finding, or the detective who was assigned and would have come out, who has a lot more experience in crime scenes, a lot more experience in looking at the crime scene and seeing if the facts as told by the participants is true? A lot of times police want to believe that a male cannot be a victim. They believe the woman is the victim. But the first sign of a problem should have been when she said, he threw me against the wall, he grabbed my neck, threw me down, and they saw no evidence of injuries on her at all. And in fact, when they took her to the police station, it took a while to do the interview. They again took pictures. They had the crime scene people come in, take pictures of her body, her neck. They had no injuries whatsoever. She herself said, I may not have been justified. They asked her, what did he say that when he was coming towards you right before you threw the knife? She looked like she was trying to make it up. So she can't say, he said, I'm going to kill you when he didn't say that. She would have said that. Nothing in her interview exonerates her or shows she was justified in using deadly force. And the force she used is contrary to the medical examiner's report. So the medical examiner says she was on top of him on a downward motion, shoving the knife 8 centimeters in his chest.
When Tim speaks, there's something very captivating. So I could see him in the courtroom. I would immediately, I think, believe most of what he is telling me. It's a good trait, Tim Jansen.
You can be my juror.
Yeah.
You're acceptable, as my cousin Vinny says. You can be my juror.
Okay, perfect. Next case, I will come up there. Carm, to you. By the way, Lisa Boris is asking if you got my background hand-me-down. We're a little sloppy today. It's not lit properly, all of those things, which irritate me, but I'll deal with it at a later time. Danishka Burdell says, Carm is a hot ticket. Carm, I got to say this openly. Without you, I would literally be nothing. I wouldn't exist.
Well, now he's waltzing back.
Yeah, but I literally, the success of the show was all thanks to you and the COE and Space Coast. And no, it really is. If I didn't have you,
you want me to tell you about?
If I didn't have you late to every show, what's that? Go ahead.
You want me to tell you about Courtney
Clenney. Yeah, Carm always has to, she speaks 6 languages, so she asked me 10 times how to pronounce it. She also had a very hard time with Christian Obumseli. But Carm, let me ask you this. Macro picture. I had you study this last night. What do you make of this relationship and or Courtney Clenney's behavior?
Courtney moved in there in her new apartment. I have to do this little short introduction. She moved in there with Christian 3 or 4 months before the murder. And already at moving, there were problems and screaming and bad behavior. But shortly after that, the landlord realized that they are having too many raucous fights, and they cannot live in an apartment building with this behavior, and he tried to evict them. And Courtney convinced the owner that she was now receiving medication for borderline personality, and she reassured the management and the owner that it will take approximately a month and her moods will level out and she will not have any more the problems. The diagnosis she gave to the owner was borderline personality. Now, it's an interesting diagnosis because it's sort of, when I was involved with doing therapy and so forth, that was the name for this condition. But now it's not anymore really. It's called part of the cluster B personality disorders. And it's even written on Google that it's very hard to diagnose this condition because it has so many facets and so many things involved with it. Not to hug up all the time, I just have to tell you that part of it is this impulsive behavior and very severe anger, okay? That kind of comes on, and also it dissipates sometimes later. But of course, there are degrees of this. It's not so easy to even verbally describe it because every person experiences it differently, and not all the points have to be present in order to give this diagnosis. But this young woman certainly had abusive, I would say almost sadistic behaviors, and this young man, the victim, watching the scene in the elevator. If anybody else saw the scene in the elevator,
we're going to play that in a moment.
Oh, I'm always ahead of the cart is always ahead of the horse in my case. So anyway, the diagnosis is cluster B personality disorder, which is a serious disorder, which is hard to diagnose.
I wasn't lying when I said Carm is a licensed therapist. I'm going to get to this question in 1 second, but I'm going to interrupt myself on purpose to take this next comment. But the question for you, Kim, why was it only second-degree murder? And we can ask Tim that as well. But first, Kathy, this show might not be for you. Is it possible to stay on subject and not waste the guest time with nonsense? So disrespectful. And Catherine, who's a big friend of ours, Carm's like, yes, that's true. If Joel was my son, I'd be cursing too. But Kim, why? I already forgot her name, but it's definitely not your show, I don't think. So go watch CNN and be bored out of your mind with Don Lemon, who's not there anymore. Don Lemon, who's no longer there. Kim, I'm feeling it today, Carm. I'm back. I'm back today, Carm. I've been reeling since vacation. Kim, why second-degree murder and not premeditated? I know you're handling the civil side, but you're an attorney.
I am an attorney. Tim, I think, is going to have a little bit better of an explanation on this. It's my understanding it's only second-degree murder. The differences between first-degree, second-degree, there's the intent element that it has to be sometimes premeditated. And, the facts and circumstances of this, it appears that it might not have been premeditated, but because she is arguing self-defense and all of that. But I think Tim might be a little bit more qualified for than me on this specific, the language.
Tim Jansen, why second degree? And what's the difference between second degree and first degree?
Well, Kim did a great job for a civil lawyer explaining.
I try.
No, you did. It was great. I'm sure you went to a great law school. Premeditation. It was you formed the intent before the act happened. They don't have that in this case. What it screams out is that she lost her mind, lost her cool, picked up this object, probably cussed at him and threw it. Okay. And if you look at the police report, it says the victim in an imminently dangerous act, demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. And that is not premeditation, but it's basically doing something so dangerous with a deadly weapon that it becomes second-degree murder. And there is a big difference between second-degree murder and first-degree murder. First-degree murder, you're going to get a life sentence in Florida. Second-degree murder, you're looking at 25 to life. And then there's always lesser included. You can get manslaughter. But what they're saying is, it's like the heat of passion crime, right? You come home and you find your spouse with somebody and you just lose it and you end up killing somebody. That's not premeditated, right? Unless you knew your wife was doing this and then you sat and waited for the guy to show up and then that would be premeditated. But this looks like, and it sounds like it was another argument and she just lost it and grabbed the knife. It's not the first time she's grabbed the knife though. She stabbed him before and threatened to kill him before and made racial comments. Those are all what we call 404B or Williams rule in the state of Florida. And I think that would be admissible both through civil and a criminal trial if they have a trial in this civil case.
Wise Child says Tim is the best. Nikki Coods, back to you, Kim. She called her mom first, which is true, before calling 911. Will they get those phone calls to see what she actually said? Is that something that you, as a civil attorney, want to get your hands on also?
Absolutely. It's not that she called her mom after. Her mom was actually on the phone, and that makes her a material witness. From the phone logs that we have, her mom was on the phone during this attack. And she actually possibly heard the attack. She actually heard, Courtney screaming and actually stabbing her. And all of that, the timing of all of that is really important, especially on the civil side. So our lawsuit is all about the apartment complex, the management company, the security company, the apartment owner, what they knew and what they could have done. And in this case, we have a lot of negligence that occurred before April 3rd. But on April 3rd, the timing of those phone calls is critically important. We know that the front desk attendant knew that there was a disturbance occurring in this apartment for 12 minutes. And they waited 12 minutes before the police actually came. If they would have, they were notified that there was a disturbance. They sent their own security to stand outside of this door for 12 minutes while they heard the screaming, while they heard the fighting, while they knew everything Carm just said about the diagnosis. She said it better than I could ever say it. So I might be calling you as an expert in my case, if that's okay. after they knew not only all of the disturbances, everything that happened the last 3 months, but the fact that now they know this woman has a medical condition, a borderline personality disorder that is not being medically resolved, that the medication's not going to be taken in effect. They had a security guard stand there for 12 minutes and did absolutely nothing while Courtney's on the phone with her mom while she's committing this murder, and then wait there, and then the police come. So the timing, the phone calls, all of that is very important to our civil case.
So I assume with that said that, you're not just going after Clenney potentially, but everyone involved at the building, the security firm, all, as they say. Is that correct?
Yes, Courtney is named in our lawsuit, but there are so many other failures. What the management company knew, they had a security company who worked there. What they knew before this, in the 3 months that they lived there, the police came to that apartment complex, to that unit 8 times. In 3 months, they had to call them 8 times. There were noise complaints over 13, 14 times. They were trying to evict her. The number of times that they could have stopped this, they could have, made sure that she couldn't have the means, the opportunity to commit this murder. And they have to be held accountable. That's why we have a criminal justice system and a civil justice system.
And do you have any idea on the criminal side? There's been all kinds of delays. There's another hearing on Friday. Any guess as to when the criminal trial might begin?
I know that there's been a lot of discovery, a lot of, filings back and forth. And speaking to the prosecutors, I think that they would like to try the case this year, when in 2024, and if that's even possible with all the depositions and everything that's going to occur. Obviously, on behalf of Christian's family, we want to see justice and we want to see swift justice. But we also want to make sure that they have all of the opportunities, everything that they need to ensure a conviction.
Excellent.
Okay. I have a question. You can start a civil case even before the criminal case goes to the trial. Is it in your interest to postpone it until after the verdict, or it's irrelevant?
Unfortunately, that's just not possible in our civil justice system. The criminal justice, it could take years. There could be appeals. My law firm, we also represented many of the victims of the Parkland school shooting. There was a civil lawsuit that occurred, and we were actually able to resolve a majority of that lawsuit before that case went to trial. Victims are entitled to justice in both systems. And if we have to wait for the entire criminal system to go through, we also have statute of limitations. And so there are situations that we unfortunately have to file it, even if there are reasons that we wanted to delay.
How long on average does a civil case take to come to some sort of conclusion?
So on average, and Tim can understand this, it's a very difficult question for a lawyer to answer. It depends, which is our favorite answer. Usually between 10 to 20 months. It all depends on the judge and the jurisdiction and how everything happens. But, we obviously try to get cases resolved and set for trial as soon as possible.
Carm, you had a follow-up?
But somehow logic dictates in my head that if the criminal trial is won by the victims, then that would positively influence what you obtain from the civil.
I think Carm's asking if the state wins, does that help you?
Yes, it does. And there are situations that we are actually allowed to say that in the civil case if it involves a crime and they are actually found guilty by a jury. There's some situations that we're allowed to say that in the civil case. On the other hand, though, there's different burdens of proof. There's different evidentiary rules in civil and criminal. And so what happens in the criminal case, there's things that they're going to be prohibited from putting in. In the civil case, there's things we're going to be prohibited. So ultimately, they are two very different trials, two very different looking trials. And so what happens in one and the workup in one is always going to help the workup in the other. I mean, the depositions in the criminal trial can be used in the civil trial and vice versa if it's sworn testimony. But they're very different. And I know Tim probably has had many cases that you've handled that there's a corresponding civil lawsuit as well. And if you can work together, that's great. And they're kind of just two different tracks that are just parallel.
I'm usually on the other side.
Oh, that's true.
Civil lawsuit.
So Tim, I was just going to ask you that actually. So your clients are usually the ones being sued by people like Kim Wald. How does that affect you, if at all, when you're dealing in the separate lane of the criminal case?
Well, it depends on the kind of case we're talking, right? Remember the Kobe Bryant rape case in Colorado, right? Where the girl came up and he allegedly did something inappropriate. Once she filed the civil suit, her credibility in the criminal case significantly was diminished. And they ended up resolving the case financially with a confidential settlement, and all the charges were dropped. So sometimes a civil action by the victim can help the defendant in a criminal case. Not always, but sometimes it can. And Kim, I was just curious when you said 10 to 20 months, that's settling the case. That's not trying the case in a civil arena, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Trying the case to take usually 2 years, a year and a half, and then you possibly have appeals and things like that.
Tim, when do you think this? Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Your question is, we sometimes would like to resolve cases criminally in the civil arena, right? Because then that potentially can limit the criminal exposure and at the same time give the victim, she doesn't have to go into a courtroom and testify what happened to her. She says, I don't want to participate anymore. But then the question is, what kind of case are we talking? Are we talking about a date rape or are we talking about a murder? You got a murder here. The state is not going to let a civil settlement resolve the case. If it was a questionable date rape, did they give consent or not? They would, but not in a murder case. No matter what that victim does, that civil case, this criminal case is going forward.
We got Sweden in the house. Shout out to them. My uncle is married to a Swedish woman. La Femme. Carm, this one's for you here. Not victim blaming. By the way, someone asked how old Carm is. You're never supposed to reveal a woman's age. She's 84. She turns 85 in August. That was the second half of the question. And she looks damn good, doesn't she? She looks great. I'm trying to make up for earlier, Carm. La Femme says, not victim blaming.
You use it by that. Okay.
But not victim blaming here, Carm, but this person wants to know, why the hell did Christian stay with her? He's not in it for the money since he was well off. She's not that pretty. She looks slimy or like someone's sloppy Joe. Carm, on a serious note, I mean, the question gets a little out of control at the end there. Not that I should talk, but why is it so difficult, both sides, for men to leave a woman and a woman to leave a man in these situations that are very volatile?
By the way, how long have they been together?
Kim, that's a great question. I think.
Yeah, it was a few years. I think it was 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Carm?
By the way, many marriages can go on like this for 30, 40, 50 years with people like totally just fighting and hostile and so forth.
Carm, that's an interesting question. You were a marriage therapist, so you would see couples. And did you find that a lot of people were not happily married but decided to stay in it even beyond kids going off to college? Why would they do that?
Oh, there are many reasons. Maybe some of them you have to look for in their personalities, in their psychodynamics. It can lead to strange relationship if you have a self-image issue, if you have your own psychological makeup. How does it interplay or interact with the other persons, even if it's in a negative way, there is still a bond, albeit a negative one, but people stay together even in less than perfect situations. This particular case, I think it was a very, I would say, one-sided. One of them, if I understand it correctly, one of them was the appeaser, and the other one was all the time the attacker. And you have to analyze what made them the appeaser and the attacker. He was a big guy, a physically big guy, but he did not use any of his any of that to his advantage.
Tim, if you're defending Courtney Clenney here, do you want this going to trial sooner than later? Because again, there have been all these motions, all these delays. Hopefully you're going to join me Friday morning for her next hearing in the Miami-Dade courtroom. But from your perspective, when would you like to see this go to trial?
Well, I don't know if I can put myself in Courtney's shoes. I think that'd be very difficult for me because I'm obviously I represent victims. That's what I do. That's what I have always done. From her perspective, I'm not really sure what their defense team's motives are. I mean, it's been a very interesting case to follow, at least, from the civil perspective of what their tactics and everything has been. I know that they're claiming self-defense, but as Tim is saying, I think it's extremely weak. All of the evidence, all of the medical examiner, I mean, everything is against that defense. So quite honestly, I don't really know what their defense strategy or tactics are. And maybe Tim has some insight into that.
Yeah. So Tim, what would your preference be if you're defending Courtney Clenney? How soon would you like this to go to trial?
Well, first of all, I would have not publicly attacked the victim in this case. I would have tried to meet with Kim, that party, because in the state of Florida, under Marcy's law, the victim's family have a great say in how a plea is resolved, how a case is resolved. Now, if you go out there and denigrate this young man, you're only insulting the family as well as of the murdered victim. I think they've poisoned the well to be able to work out a deal. I think she'd have to get new counsel immediately and try to negotiate something. I'm not sure going to trial sooner is better than later. I think the case is only going to get worse for the defense, because the more the state finds witnesses and these calls and stuff, it looks like it's going to get worse for her. They may be able to get another expert that will, of course, contradict the so-called defense's expert. I don't think there's a lot of depositions in this case because there's not a lot of witnesses that were there, but they're clearly going to have experts. They're going to have some neighbors who could be witnesses, the officers that showed up, the ambulance that showed up. So I would think this is not a case I would want to try. Looking at the autopsy report, looking at the facts, and looking at my client's statements, if my investigator was Monica and I, we would be trying to work out a solution with the family. And Kim, I take it that the state attorney, you're in contact with them. They're not going to do any kind of resolution without letting you know. Is that right?
Not. Absolutely not. And they know that we want to go to trial, that we want justice, that we're not accepting a plea or anything, because she needs to be held accountable. She needs to be convicted, because this wasn't self-defense. All of the evidence, everything is beyond clear exactly what happened here. She was volatile. She had, like you said, one of her heat of the moment passion, and she killed him point blank. And it's not something that we're going to be shying away from. The family will be there every day in the courtroom, and they want to see justice.
And how different would it be, Kim? How different would it be, Kim, if the lawyer or the new lawyer contacted you and said, "Listen, between you and I, we know that this is a problem. She wants to take responsibility. She knows she's going to have to assume responsibility. She knows she's going to have to be convicted. She feels terrible about it. we want to see if we can work something out. She's not saying she wants scot-free, but she wants to work some kind of resolution where she will publicly admit, and it's a civil, you want her to be adjudicated guilty or you want her to enter a plea, not no contest, right? Because all that is admissible in the civil case. All that helps you. A defense lawyer has to give something to get something, right? And the defense lawyer has to realize what's in the best interest of my client. Pissing off the prosecution and victim on a case I can't win, or trying to resolve it where I can cut the losses, minimize the loss, and we all move forward. That's what I would do in this case.
Tim, what kind of deal do you think you could work out, hypothetically, if you were her attorney? What would you look for?
You'd look for maybe a manslaughter charge, which gives, and they can work out a guideline range, which is much less than what she'll get. You could put in there some anger management. You can, like you said, plead guilty. So that is admissible in a civil proceeding. And maybe get her to write an apology or a statement of facts as how it really happened, which could then help the civil suit against the premises and the security. They're probably bonded. You try to rent an apartment today, and if you've ever been charged with any crime or a misdemeanor, they can turn you down. So these leases today are so one-sided towards the landlord. They could have kicked her out of this apartment based on the domestic violence complaints, for sure, which opens them up to liability. And that's why they're suing them.
Carm, this is an interesting comment here from Annie K. Then I want to play that video. Courtney seems to be the one controlling the relationship, including the murder scenario, with a staged question there. Is she so controlling that she was trying to ultimately control the narrative, Carm?
I'm going to something that will make me not very popular. I am questioning if she really wanted to kill him. Maybe in that moment when she grabbed the knife, she was like really furious. But overall, I think she just wanted to hurt him. I don't think she wanted to kill him, because allegedly, right after the knife she was stabbed with the knife, Courtney was holding him in her arms and crying. So I think I don't know if it's not a premeditated murder, but it's not a murder that was intended murder. I don't know if that legally matters or not. Doesn't matter.
I won't even follow up on that with Kim, because I don't want to hold her, anything she says can and will be held against her in a court of law. So I don't think she wants to admit that, but I guess that is a possibility. This is interesting because I didn't see this or notice this, at least.
Jim can comment.
Tim.
Carm,
Carm,
you were exactly what you said. If you were a juror, you found her guilty of the charge she's charged with. Not premeditated, not intentional, but an act that was so dangerous and deprived, and it caused a death. That's what she would be convicted of. That's what she's charged with.
You mean the second
degree?
Second degree manslaughter.
By the way, quick programming note. We're coming back to you in 2 hours and 16 minutes, and we are going to be discussing at 7 p.m. Eastern time the Jennifer Farber Dulos case, which is a very twisted, horrific case. She ended up declared dead by a judge. Her ex-husband committed suicide, and her ex-husband's girlfriend at the time is going to face murder charges in a courtroom beginning tomorrow. And we're going to lay out the whole case. Incredible wealth involved in this, custody battles, 5 children orphaned. We have some amazing panelists coming on tonight, including Wendy Murphy and Anjanette Levy of Law and Crime, and Jonna Spilbor, who is a spitfire, aggressive attorney. One thing, Kim, here from KDS, I don't ever see mentioned in Courtney's, one thing I don't ever see mentioned is Courtney's pants are white and they are pink when she goes to talk to the cops, and she didn't change. They are blood soaked. Is that something that you take notice of? that you admit into evidence? What do you do with that bit of information?
Yeah, so through the civil case, we obviously have obtained all of the photographs, the videos from the police, and it is a horrifying sight. It's something that as an attorney we have to see, but the crime here and the actual apartment and everything, there is blood everywhere. I mean, the body worn cam of when the police finally show up and they open up the door. I mean, seeing her, she is dripped head to toe in blood, and I think that also goes to how all of this occurred, of the angle of the knife, the severity of her throw, how deep it went into his body. All of those things are obviously very graphic. They're unfortunately necessary evidence that we have to show a jury. We don't do it for the dramatic effect, but it is a piece of evidence. It is what happened, and all of that, the civil jury and the criminal jury, they're all going to see those photos because this is the facts. This is what happened in the case.
Tim, doesn't premeditated from Yala involve seconds? Doesn't it have to be elaborate? I thought so. Just elaborate on that.
That's exactly true. Premeditation doesn't have to take a long time. You can get premeditation within seconds or minutes of an event. If there's not a superseding event that you could call a heat of passion or a fight, like say they weren't having a fight. Example, he's laying on the bed and she just walks over and stabs him in the chest. That would be premeditated because she decided with the knife, I'm going to stab him. And it didn't look like she lost anything. This is a scenario. This isn't what happened. So I'm just trying to give an example. But premeditation, I have a case now where my guy is charged with first-degree murder, and we believe it's self-defense. And they're saying because my guy had a gun that it was premeditated, even though the victim attacked my client without any provocation, and my guy then pulled the gun and shot him, killed him. And so they're claiming that was enough for premeditation. Of course, we believe it's self-defense. So,
wow. Is this guy facing life in prison?
Yes.
Wow. I like the comment. I love the name. Addicted to STS. If I ever get into trouble, I'm calling Tim. There you go.
Put my number up for that person. Those are the ones that never get in trouble.
Nor'easter JP watching from Budapest. Carm, you know curses in Hungarian. It's your maiden tongue. Would you like to say anything? You don't have to curse, but what should Nor'easter say? You give him a phrase for
kívánok.
Say it one more time.
It means I wish you a good night.
Say it one more time.
Jó estét kívánok.
By the way, that's Carm's native tongue right there. And in every language, no matter what she speaks of her 6 languages, she always has a Hungarian accent. Here is the video. Let's watch this.
I really have languages for the record. The 6 is Spanish and I fake it.
Okay, here you go, Carm. And I want to get your reaction to this and obviously Kim's. Watch the video here.
We've been talking about Courtney Clenney and her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli, trying to make their way up in their private elevator to the $12,000 a month apartment. Bit of a fight here. Now, there's 2 different interpretations of this. The prosecution says, yeah, this is Courtney Clenney abusing Christian Obumseli, who she eventually stabbed to death in his chest. I spoke with her lawyer and said, well, he's like not supposed to be going in that elevator to the apartment. She was trying to go to the apartment, and he's like stalking and following her and won't leave the apartment that she pays for. So what's the truth? Well, it'll be battled out in court, but she's charged.
That is our friend Vinny Politan of Court TV. Obviously, I'm going to play it and talk. We'll talk. Carm, what is your take on this as a therapist, seeing what's transpiring here? My dear mother.
I hear you. I'm looking at the TV, and well, you see the context is important. If you look at them just having a fight, or if you know that she went into the elevator and he followed her after they agreed that he's not coming up.
See, I look at that, see her holding open the door for him to come in. She pushes the button and realizes she doesn't have the little whatever you have to push it. And then she gets frustrated. Another sign of her anger. She lashes out at the elevator, and then she starts lashing out at him.
Yeah, you mean she needs like a fob?
Yeah, she needs a fob. A fob, that's right.
And Carm, on the context, right? We have all the phone records between Christian, between Courtney. We know that during this time that there was no time that he was kicked out, that they had this volatile relationship. I think everyone agrees for that. But we have all their phone records. We have all of it. You know, she would get upset. He would leave, take a walk around the neighborhood, and then he would come back. He was on the lease to the apartment. He was actually named on the lease. When she filled it out, he was named on there as a resident who was staying at the apartment for those 3 months. So this story that her defense attorneys are making up, the evidence will speak for itself. We have the text messages. We see this relationship. And from this video, you see that Christian is doing everything he can to try to calm down the situation. And she just keeps coming back time and time again and keeps just hitting him and abusing him. And he's doing his best to just try to push her away and not react.
Yeah, he looks like he's trying to, ease the situation. And you can see he's in a defensive posture this whole time. He's just trying to press the button. At one right there, he doesn't raise a hand. He's just raising the arm to defend himself. But he's holding her down. It's really sad to watch, actually, considering this guy is in the prime of his, not even the prime of his life, getting into the prime of his life, physically very fit. But you see him, he's just holding her back. This is so tragic because he's only 27. Someone here, Amy P. in New Jersey. How old is Courtney? She was 26 at the time, and she's 27 now. Kim, there's reports, too, that she was dating, I want to say Mr. Olympia, something like that, and she broke his jaw. So there's other people she's been in relationships. How important is it from your position to gather that kind of information? And is all that admissible in a civil case?
Yeah, so her demeanor in general, all of those things are important to find out what is going on. Who is she? What type of person she is, because some of the things that make this civil case really unique is the dynamic between them. There's gender issues, there's race issues, there's DV issues, because when you see this couple, a black man, a larger black man, and a white woman, and the police, when they came to this apartment 8 times, if one time they would have suspected him being the abuser, we all know, unfortunately, what would have happened. He would have been called and he would be sitting in jail. But because it was the other way, because it was her being the aggressor, all of those dynamics are extremely important. That it took the police every time they're saying, okay, something's going on here. I don't know what it is, but we're not going to arrest this woman. If one time there was even the smallest bit of evidence that he was the aggressor, he would have been carted away to jail. But that's not what happened. We know that it was this reverse situation where he was the victim, and through manipulation, through money, through whatever means it was possible, he stayed with her. And it was a very volatile, a very unhealthy relationship. And, being the victim in that situation, it's difficult to leave. She manipulated him. She dangled money in front of him to do whatever she could. I'm sure she apologized after these situations, told him that she loved him, to reel him back. And, he was unfortunately so stuck at that point that there was no other turning back. You can't turn back when you're in that situation. You're embarrassed, that he, as a larger male, is being beat up and hit by this small woman. Who's going to even believe him? So there's so many dynamics that come into play here. Her past, like you said, the prior relationship she has, all of these things are very important to our case.
And as the chat is pointing out, and Tim did earlier, he was stabbed by her beforehand. We were just talking about this ex-boyfriend whose jaw she apparently broke. Bayou Babe here, Tim Jansen, could she get off with a mental plea? When they arrested her finally, she was in Hawaii at a rehab facility for what she described as PTSD and also drug addiction. Would you go down that road, Tim, as a defense attorney, and say, look, she's not competent to stand trial? I'm sure everyone and their mother, no pun intended, tries to, raise that case if possible.
Okay, so there's two different areas you got. Competency to go to trial is completely separate from was she competent and mentally sane at the time of the offense. Okay, so what do you look at? You look at her conduct during the offense, you look at her conduct after the offense in determining what her mental state was at the time of the offense. She called her mother 2 times, talked for like 12 minutes. Then she called 911. Then she went to the police station. She waived Miranda. She gave statements. She gave her explanations. She wasn't suffering any mental inability to respond to questions. She gave reasons. She tried to explain. Nothing at all shows that she was not acting properly at the time of the offense. Now, just because she went to a rehab center, an expensive one in Hawaii, doesn't mean she suffered a mental defect. It could be she went there for drug addiction, and maybe she went there to try to get away, hoping she wouldn't be charged. That doesn't mean it had anything to do with how her actions were at the time of the offense. I do not believe she has a defense, and that's going to be NGI, not guilty by reason of insanity at the time of the offense. I've just had a couple of these. They're not easy to get. You know, you can find an expert, but most experts are really good psychiatrists. These forensic ones, they know malingering. They look at the reports. They look at what happened. They look at what she says, what she did. Those are all factors they take in consideration. It's not something that's easily sold. I believe she is competent to go forward. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen a motion by the defense. They would be obligated to bring it to the court immediately if they thought she wasn't competent to proceed.
Ned Smith here for you, Carm. Ned's a friend of the show, a funny guy. Did she call her mommy? Who would ever call someone mommy? Did she call her mommy looking for reassurance for what she did? Followed by this comment, Clenney's mother told her immediately to claim self-defense. Carm, it's obviously speculation, but what do you think was going on when she called her mother at that moment?
Well, what happened is that she stabbed him. He was dying, and the anger that she experienced a few minutes before kind of subsided to a degree, and now she was thinking more rationally, and she was asking her mother, telling her mother how she was asking for help, obviously, from her mother.
And Carm, this is a very important comment, and I'm glad a dog named Boo dropped it in our chat. It says, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in 1987. That's when I graduated high school, by the way. Haven't killed anyone yet. People like her, Courtney Clenney, give those who don't behave as badly a bad name. Don't dare tell people because they'll immediately be afraid of me. Very important here, Carm. A lot of people are diagnosed with this, but it doesn't make you a killer. There's plenty of medications and plenty of great people. Correct, Carm?
No. First of all,
how come no one yells at Carm for interrupting me, by the way? Why is it on? This is like the situation between Courtney and Chris. No one believes that Carm interrupts me. Go ahead, Carm.
Listen, we'll deal with this afterwards.
Yes.
But right now, I think I made it a point, if we run back and listen to what I said earlier about borderline personality, I said that each case has to be judged on its merit. You cannot, there is a saying, there are no diagnoses. There are only different people responding to different illnesses in mental health to a bigger or lesser degree. And just because somebody was called by a psychiatrist or psychologist a borderline personality, if you go just on Google, you don't have to read any textbooks, and you start to examine what is a borderline personality, you will see an enormous variation. It's maybe it's a very wrong analogy, but there is such a thing as if you are autistic, there are autistic people who are brilliant, and there are autistic people who cannot even speak because of their autism, and they're both called autistic. So I would not let a labeling influence how I feel. I hope you understand the person who said that he was diagnosed in 1987.
I believe it was a woman.
He or she was diagnosed in 87, and even the terminology changed. The requirements for this diagnosis changed. Many things, for example, a long time ago, if I'm digressing, but I love to digress, if you were gay, it was considered a mental illness, and today we know it's 100% not. So things changed since 1987, and if you never murdered anybody till now, my advice is don't do it.
Well, my next book is going to be Surviving the Psychiatrist, a story about my dad and all the advice he gave me. And one of the things he said was, don't let labels hold you back. No one, if you are suffering from bipolar or any kind of mental illness, it does not make you a bad person, a criminal, an evil person. Everyone's got something to contend with. As Carm always says, we're all just trying to survive in a rough world. Now, Carm, I'm not bringing this up, but Drenda is, and I won't even try to pronounce her last name. Love you, Carm. You too, Joel. I'm always the afterthought, but it's fine. Not really, but it's sort of fine. Ordered your book and can't wait to read it. Look at that. Anyone who's helping the homeless is going to get a shout out from me.
Person, because I don't come out smelling as a perfect rose.
JWJ, hi Joel. He or she calls you Karma, which I love. Hi Joel, Karma, panel and chat. I'm from New Jersey, the Garden State, our home state, and my channel is based on the about the homeless in Camden, New Jersey, right next to Philly. So shout out and kudos to you for helping the homeless. Kim, this comes back to you here, back to what we were talking about earlier from Angie. Would there be laws preventing the security/management company from entering? Is there, I mean, do they have, they're obviously going to have their own attorneys, but, you know, liability wise, how much liability do they have?
So that is obviously one of the main issues in the civil case. The security company has filed what's called a motion to dismiss, and they're arguing we don't have any duty to go into an individual condo unit. First of all, we know that they did have notice, that they knew that there is police constantly called to this unit. Security was constantly brought to this unit. They knew that this woman had a medical condition that she announced to them. She gave them that notice. And, you know, this was an emergency situation when this was occurring. They had notice from neighbors that they were hearing screaming. They were hearing yelling. You know, they heard that the front desk even called and had their security outside. You know, if there was a fire in that apartment, if there was the water leaking and the neighbors downstairs were complaining about it, the security would have busted through that door. They would have gone in. They would have gone in to try to take down that fire. So what makes this situation different? If this was the first time that there was any problems in that unit, perhaps they didn't need to go in, but this wasn't the first time. It wasn't the second time. It wasn't the third time. It was the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th time that they had a problem with these individuals, to the extent that they were trying to evict them. Before this, about 4 or 5 days before, she was going to be evicted. The sheriffs were going to show up to that apartment and drag her out. But she told them that she has this disorder. And instead of saying, you know what, we're really sorry about that, but you still need to vacate, they said, well, you know what, you're a month late in rent. So if you go ahead and pay us your $10,000 for rent, you can stay here and we're just going to wipe everything in the past clean. That's not that's not okay. They have to be responsible. They have to protect the other people in the building. And this was an emergency situation. They had to go in and they didn't. They sat outside for 12 minutes and allowed this murder to occur.
Bonnie Lee Lopez asking me how many books have been ordered. She's in Chile, Vermont. I have no idea, to be totally honest. I have not a clue, no clue at all. But hopefully it will be one more than what Mitch Albom sold when it came to Tuesdays with Maury. By the way, Mitch Albom, famous author, coming on the show February, whatever Sunday is, February 5th.
4th, I think.
4th, maybe February 4th. It's a
but you have
Sunday.
to emphasize, we
First
usually,
Sunday in February.
Joel,
Yes, Carm.
we usually don't have podcasts on Sunday, and this is not a true crime podcast, but it's a
That's not true, Carm, and I'll tell you why. Because Mitch Albom's new book is called The Little Liar. It's a bestseller, and it's about the Holocaust. And the Holocaust is arguably the biggest crime ever committed against mankind. You went through it, Carm, so not altogether true that it is not a true crime story, but we're going to be discussing his book.
This book is fictional.
Look at this, Carm. Nikki Coods wants to know when we're going to be in New York City. Carm already was trying to back out of some of this book tour stuff. If I have to put her in my suitcase, she's coming. I'll tell you right now, the definite cities: Miami, Boston, New York, Chicago, LA, and we're going to fill in some gaps. We're going to Nashville for Crime Con, but we'll fill in some gaps along the way. Tim Jansen from Ambush. We'll go about another 5-10 minutes because Kim has to get going at 1:15, and I have to be respectful of her time or she will sue me. Ambushed. Can the prosecution bring up the other knife attacks, Tim Jansen, on Christian Obumseli and other boyfriends by this woman? What is going to be admissible?
Well, it's gonna be Williams rule or 404B. It's going to be decided by when did it occur? What were the circumstances of the event? How similar are they to what happened here? A court will then do a 403 analysis, whether or not it's relevant, whether the probative value outweighs the prejudicial effect, and the court will determine then if they believe it's admissible. It's very detrimental to a defendant or in a case if that is admissible. And I think if she stabbed this victim within, say, a year or two, I would think it would be highly relevant and would be admissible. I don't know about the others. Time and duration. Time is the biggest thing. If it happened 20 years ago, judge can say, I don't think it's relevant. But if it's within a year, I think it is relevant. It's the same party. I think it is relevant.
Tim, Nikki Coods says, besides Carm, you're her favorite guest. Would Tim ever take this case if he could? And by the way, here's the DV hotline. All joking aside, if anyone is going through stuff and you never know what people are going through, that number can help you out, could even save your life. 1-800-799-7233, 1-800-799-7233. Tim Jansen, would you take this case?
Well, if I did take the case, I would not have gone on court TV and talked about the facts. I would have not denigrated the victim. I would have gotten all my evidence and gotten experts, tried to work with the victim's family, try to work with the prosecutor, and see if there's a chance to get a resolution. The best way to get a good plea is to prepare for trial and have a defense. It's not to attack the victims. It's just it just seems like a very inexperienced legal maneuver. And was it done for media, publicity? Because it's not going to help the case. And in fact, I think some of his comments violate the Florida bar rules on talking publicly about a case that's still pending. It's a big mistake. Now, of course, you know some of the cases I've had, Joel, and they're much more serious than this case. But you don't always know your client's liability. They don't come in and tell you. They get charged with the crime and then say the person dies. Next thing you know, what was it, an aggravated assault or battery turns into a murder case. And then the facts get really, really bad. So I'm not going to say I would not take the case, but I can tell you I would not have handled it the way it's been handled.
I'm just looking at the quote here. This is Kim. This is Frank Prieto, who is the defense attorney for Courtney Clenney. And he made this comment publicly. He says it's an absolute injustice to charge a victim of domestic violence and human trafficking with a crime. He is saying that Christian Obumseli, there's no other way to read it, was dealing in human trafficking, presumably of her. And I'm not a lawyer, but to me, that's almost libelous if it's not actually libelous.
I think it is.
What do you make of that?
There is no evidence. There is absolutely nothing ever to substantiate any of those claims. They're trying this case in the court of public opinion because they don't have the evidence, because they don't have anything in the actual court of law. So they're just going to go on TV and try to do whatever they can, because in the court of law, there is no evidence. There is not a single piece of testimony, a single evidence, anything that could substantiate any of those claims. So the jury in the criminal case will hear the evidence, will hear what actually happened, and the family, that there is no question that she will be convicted, because this is black and white. Everything that they're saying is just to try to convince the court of public opinion, but the court of law, which is the court that actually matters, the truth will come out, and justice will 100% be served.
Once again, I digress. So whoever that was at the beginning is really going to hate me. But someone asked if Carm is a Leo. We are both Leos, both Carm and I. I'm at the end of July. She's the beginning of August. Susan B. It's not me, Carm. It's them asking, is your book on audio too? It is going to be an audio book, and it is going to be voiced by myself and my beautiful mother, which I think
because
is
it's an interview. Joel is interviewing me, and it's all on tape, so I couldn't deny that I was cursing. There was evidence. But
the funniest thing is going to be when you have to actually curse at me because we're reading the book, and you're going to have to do it dramatically.
I did something in the very end of the book. I have to tell you this because
don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Do
Okay.
not do it.
Okay, fine.
Give that away. There's a special ending.
Special ending.
Don't worry. This is up your alley here, Carm, from Jelena Sirovina. Dober Dan Carmela. Greetings from the Netherlands. What is Dober Dan?
It's in Serbo-Croatian. Well, a good day. Dobar dan.
And what would you like to say back to her? Now we're going from Hungarian to Serbian, Carm. What would you say to her?
Well, let's not do it today, but I will do this last thing. Želim vam sretnu novu godinu. Because I went to school.
My whole life, people say, how come you don't speak Serbian or Hungarian? How can you understand that? It just sounds like you're slurping soup. There's no way to understand that. It's impossible to understand.
Yeah, but why don't you speak Spanish? Your wife speaks perfect Spanish, and your children
I'm terrible with languages, but I'm good at getting the COE to put elements in the show. Let's listen to this. This is again from Court TV. Listen to this quickly. We'll get reactions, and then we'll let Kim, Tim, and Carm go. Almost all right.
Open the door for real. This isn't cool. I have a lump on the back of my head.
By the way, so this is a dramatized text exchange between Christian and Courtney that Court TV did.
Feel good. Open the door for real. This isn't cool. I have a lump on the back of my head, and I'm dizzy and anxious, and I can't keep walking up and down when my leg hurts. Come on. Courtney, can you come get me? I'm not feeling too hot, and I need to lay down with this ice pack. I can't see straight. I've been sitting in the restroom for an hour. Courtney, this is up. I have a lump on my head, and I'm bleeding, and have anxiety. Can you answer your phone? Courtney, can you let me in? You hit me in the face with the phone, then continue to hit the back of my head with the phone. Now I have a lump. I'm bleeding, throwing up, think I got a mild concussion, and have anxiety.
And it keeps going on like that. Kim, when you hear that, he's got a lump in the back of the head. She smacked him with the phone. How much strength does that add to your case?
I mean, it just goes back to this volatile relationship of why he was staying in it, of him being the true victim of this horrible situation. And I think it strengthens our case and the criminal case because these are the facts. We know what happened. We know what their relationship is because we have all the evidence.
Carm, what do you make of that? You know, he's basically pleading to be let back into the apartment again, that he was smashed in the head with a phone. He's got a headache.
Our audiences are familiar with the Markel case, and Lacaze, who really had a crush on
Jeff Lacaze,
on Wendy
Adelson,
was really taken by her, and he was willing to almost believe her because he was having a major attraction and maybe even love for her. So I think it happened to this young man Christian also, that, he became sort of the slave of love. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it's possible that that he did. She was doing OnlyFans, and I looked up what is this. I discover weird things every day, but this is a very interesting website, and I think women who are like exhibitionists go on this site, probably among other people, and maybe she was also an exhibitionist, that she did these strange appearances to the point where she made about $2 million with this. Is it correct?
Yet she was $10,000 behind in rent. Welcome to Miami. Carm, have you been to Slovenia? They're saying hello from Slovenia. Have you ever been?
You know who is from Slovenia?
Who's that?
I don't.
It's the only show where we're talking.
I don't know if I can even mention the name on this show, but it's Trump's wife, Melania.
Oh, there you go.
And yesterday I saw
her mother died.
Yeah, yesterday I saw on CNN that her mother died.
She was young, 78 years old. We don't discuss politics on this show, Carm. Gwig says to you, Kim, and
we discuss Slovenia.
We do. Goldman sued OJ and won, but they never really got anything from him. That happens, Kim. Is that right?
Yeah, in those cases, sometimes that does happen, but we know that she does have assets here. And again, the civil case is the larger picture. There are other defendants. There's the security company, the management company, the owner of the complex, and Courtney as well. And it's not about the money for the family. I mean, they're doing this for justice. They're doing this so that the next time a security company sees something like this, it doesn't happen to another victim. The next time an apartment complex has a volatile, couple, that doesn't do it. The money will never bring Christian back, but if they can help save another person's life, that's why we're doing this.
Kim, I have two quick questions for you. Then we're going to wrap it up with final thoughts. I'm always curious about this. What is your day-to-day like? Are you on the phone? Are you writing motions? What do you do most of your day?
So every day is different. We're in trial. We're running around to inspections, to depositions, hearings. Zoom's made it a little bit different, that we do a lot on the computer. But that's why I love my job. Every day is a little bit different, and you learn something, and you're able to help people and help clients every day.
My day is always different. It's either the babysitter getting into a fender bender, Carm screaming at me not to talk about my book. You never know what's coming. I can just guarantee you that someone somewhere in some corner of my world is going to be yelling at me. Kim, last thing I want to get your take on, and we talked about it. We talked about it earlier. This knife was apparently thrown from 10 feet away, but as Tim said, it penetrated I forget the medical term, but the artery on the right side of the chest, 8 centimeters. What do you do from your standpoint? Do you have to bring in a medical expert? This is insane. This is basically implying she's a ninja, throwing this knife basically as she was falling from 10 feet away. It's just absurd.
It is absurd. And, the civil case, we don't have to prove how he was killed or the mechanism of it. But in the state attorney's case, they don't have to bring in their own expert, because the independent medical examiner in the autopsy showed exactly what happened. So this isn't going to be a case where there's a battle of an expert. That wasn't paid by the state attorney's office in relation to this case. He's the independent expert, the only medical doctor that will be truly independent in this case. And he said exactly what happened, that it clearly could not, it was, medically impossibility for it to actually be thrown.
KCL, regardless, I think Courtney was acting in over-the-top anger. She was out of control. When people are that angry, they need to chill somewhere away from people. KCL, big friend of the show, follows a lot of these cases, always knows. Kimmy Wells, echoing my sentiments. I'm 27 minutes in, and Tim has my full attention. Just wow. He makes everything make sense. Tim does have the gift of gab, the gift of explanation, too.
He has the gift of knowledge.
Knowledge, that too, Carm. Look at this, Carm. You ready to go here? STS should be live 24 hours a day. I will do the overnights because I'm a night owl.
If STS is live 20, then we will be dead.
Carm, I'm going to have to rein you in like those reindeer on Christmas Eve, because like Santa Claus does, because you were about to give away the very last page of the book. It's unbelievable.
I am generous.
Unbelievable.
I give.
I'm going to have to. She's just known as Carm. There's certain people with one name: Elvis, Oprah, Liberace, and then there's Carm. Carm, your final thoughts today.
It's a very sad case. They lived in a beautiful place. They were both young, and they could have had a very enjoyable life on South Beach. But look what they did.
Tim Jansen. What is there to say about Tim Jansen? He's my partner in crime here, literally and figuratively. He is one half of the Jansen and Davis Law Firm in Tallahassee. He's done it all, and he spent 5 years as a federal prosecutor. How does this case wind up, Tim Jansen?
Well, I'm curious to see if she gets another lawyer, because I'm curious to see if the judge finds a lawyer in contempt for the comments. They moved to sanction the lawyer. I'd be curious to see what happens. Kim, I think maybe the state will hire an expert only if they get a report from the defense expert, and they'll try to find one that can dispute that. And if they don't have to mention him. But I agree, the independent ME is good, but if they're going to bring in an expert, they might want to try to have one to just negate it, because then a jury will think, okay, 2 experts, we'll stick with the ME. But you're right. They can, the ME it can be, depending on the ME, if they're young and been around, but common sense. You try to throw a knife from 10 feet away, you're not going to go into someone 8 centimeters. And she was holding it like this. That's how she was describing it in the interview. She wasn't saying like, you throw it or toss the axe. That's not how she was holding it. So,
Tim Jansen, while I have you held captive here, we would love to have you Friday when Courtney's in court.
What time is that?
It's she's going to be, I think it's 9:30. We would start at 9:15. You let me know if you can do it. Otherwise,
okay.
But we are going to do some live coverage and analysis of Courtney Clenney in court. Tim will let me know after this. From Lindsay Hendricks to Kim Wald, for Kimberly, will you please pass on our love, respect, and grief to Christian's family? I hope they know how many people out there are aware of his story and truly feel for him and them alike. This is why I always say best guest, better community. And I agree with this sentiment. Kimberly, that's not the one, but it says Kimberly is amazing. Where did you go? Here it is. And someone said, you've got to have Kim back on. Kim, will you come back on despite the inauspicious circumstances surrounding today's podcast?
Absolutely. And I'll only come back if Carm's here to join us, and Tim. So
okay, we'll do it again. The 3 of us. Ida just gave a super sticker. Kim, your final thoughts here. What is this case? How's it unraveling for you here? And did it turn out? And your final thoughts.
No, we appreciate you having us on. And again, we're doing this really for justice, to make sure that when things like this happen, people take notice. You can't just turn a blind eye. You can't just allow these things to happen and not take responsibility.
On that note, a quick reminder, we're going to be back on 7 p.m. Eastern tonight on the Jennifer Farber Dulos case out of New Canaan, Connecticut. People always yell at me, why are you looking at your phone? It's because I take notes. And I'm looking at some of the countries that were in the chat. So on that note, love you, America. We'll see you at 7 p.m. Love you, Sweden. They were in the chat. The UK, the Republic of Ireland, Australia, Canada, and as I said already, America. Love you, America. Love you, Tallahassee. The state of Florida. We're all from Florida in this little square box here, but love to all.